Platform.
Good evening and welcome to the People's Platform. American author Frank Herbert said, "Good government never depends upon laws but upon the personal qualities of those who govern. The machinery of government is always subordinate to the will of those who administer that machinery. The most important element of government, therefore, is the method of choosing leaders." As Sri Lanka gears itself for the upcoming presidential election, the stakes are incredibly high for the country's future. We're in an IMF-supported program. We are still experiencing the lingering effects of 2022's economic crisis. Tonight, let's delve into all things election from a legal perspective. I'm so pleased to welcome back to the studio Attorney at Law N.K. Ashokbharan. Good evening and welcome to the show, Ashokbharan.
Good evening, Sonali. Great to be back.
Good to have you again. Ashokbharan, we're less than a month away from presidential elections. Citizens essentially desire conscionable leadership, leaders who would act in their best interests. But is this a far-fetched concept?
Conscionable leaders is a bit far-fetched, I think. I think people want who they want. I mean, sometimes people vote on ethnic lines, on ethnic interests, sometimes on religious interests, sometimes on certain parochial interests. So they might not be in the interest of the larger populace. So it's not always, I mean, people vote on the grounds of common good. Sometimes it's a very self-centric, to put it very bluntly, very selfish choice. So I think that is why we also have, objectively speaking, bad politicians. Bad politicians are made by bad choices made by people being selfish. That is at least my philosophical deduction, I should say.
And also ignorance or lack of awareness plays a role.
I mean, that seems to be the popular perspective, but I tend to disagree on that. I think people knew what kind of choices they are making. I mean, for example, people reject a certain kind of leader and his cohort 5 years ago, and then after 5 years they suddenly re-elect them. What has changed in that 5 years? I mean, has the sinners become saint in 5 years? So I think it's not ignorance. Ignorance is a convenient excuse. Many tend to apply, giving that the people, whatever is referred to as an innocent. But I do not think so. I think every individual who votes makes a choice. And for whatever reason, they make a particular choice. From
this philosophical introduction, I'd like to move into the upcoming presidential election, where 39 candidates are vying for the top post, Ashokbharan. How many is too many? Why are there so many candidates? What do they want? What are they looking for?
I mean, I am surprised as you are, because I think this could be a world record. I don't know, 39 candidates in a presidential election, where to win that election you need to get more than half the votes. See, I see a very troubling problem here. It's not that everyone, you and me, can go and contest the presidential polls. If you look at the qualifications and disqualifications as provided by the Constitution and the Presidential Election Act, not everyone can easily go and contest presidential elections. I mean, you should be a qualified elector. So there are qualifications to be an elector. So that is, you have to be more than 18 years old, you have to be a citizen, so on and so forth. And in addition to that, there are other qualifications. Then to become a president, you have to be over 30 years old. But that is not, that is not the only qualification. When it comes to nomination, now this is the most trickiest part. A lot of people do not realize. This goes to the fundamental problem which I want to impress upon. So in Sri Lanka, a person can be nominated, any person who is qualified to become, or rather not disqualified to become a president, can be nominated by a recognized political party. And the recognized political party for its nominee should pay only a rupees 50,000 deposit. But unrecognized political party, that is any political party that is not recognized by the election commission, or an individual elector can nominate a present or former legislator, that is a member of parliament, and they have to pay 75,000 as deposit. So if you are not a parliamentarian, present or past, and if a recognized political party is not nominating you, you cannot contest in the presidential election. This is where we have to look at the problem. Now, this time 39 are contesting, but I think 40 had paid the deposits. Out of that 40, 22 are nominated by recognized political parties. I'll tell you a fun fact here. Sri Lanka has, I believe, last time I checked in the election commission website, 84 recognized political parties. Guess how many does India have? India, now Sri Lanka has a population of 22 million. India has a population of 1.4 billion. So India has over, I think, 67 times the population of what Sri Lanka has. India has only 6 recognized political parties nationally, and only 57 recognized political state parties. Of course, they have about 2,700 plus registered parties, not recognized parties. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, I mean, this goes down to the fundamental problem I'm saying. Now, we hear often, people having these small parties. In India, they call these letterpad parties or letterhead parties because they exist only in letterheads. Come out and say that they are going to sell their party, or they are the owner of a party. How can you own a party? So in Sri Lanka, because of this common way of having easy recognition of political parties, I think that was introduced after the 2009 amendment to the Parliamentary Elections Act, where the requirement is if you had been in active politics for 4 years as a political party, or in the opinion of the commission you are a viable party to contest elections, or if you had contested in 2 tickets for parliament and won one, you have a person in your party, then you can form a recognized political party. You can apply and become a recognized political party. That is not how it works in India. In India, there is a very stringent requirement. You have to obtain a certain percentage of votes and certain number of seats in order to maintain the status of recognized political party. Once you lose that status from recognized political party, you will be losing that status. So I am saying that we are at a juncture, we have to rethink this whole idea about recognized political parties, because they are given certain privileges, like they can nominate anyone, not a present or former legislator, to contest in the presidential election. 2, they pay relatively less deposit than the others. So I think, and there are other privileges as well, they have a permanent symbol. I think Sri Lanka has to reconsider this whole idea or notion of recognized political parties, because that is where this whole too many people contesting presidential election comes in. I don't think historically, if you see, not 39 but large numbers have contested, and most of these people who are contesting, this is not their first presidential polls, and earlier also they have not polled enough to even retain the deposit. Now, coming to the point of deposits, 50,000 and 75,000, these deposits were set by the Presidential Elections Act of 1981. In 1981, one US dollar was about 16 to 17 Sri Lankan rupees. How much is it today? So if you even peg it to dollar, it will be around, I believe, 8.5 lakhs, so 850,000 and 1.275 million. as deposits if you peg that figure. So I think a statutory amendment, a new law amending this setup of recognized political parties and deposits should come in. Not suggesting that everyone should have an opportunity to contest. I believe there has to be a realistic chance. Otherwise, I heard the Election Commission has said that every additional candidate costs about 200 million. I think it's people's money. And now that we are crunching numbers because we are recovering from the worst economic downfall of this country, so I believe we need proper reforms. So that is where the problem lies, in the recognized political parties, the numbers, as well as the deposit.
Sure. Ashokbharan, we also need to talk about the importance of ensuring election integrity, campaign regulation. We have a new statute pertaining to campaign finance, which was much needed all of these years. And I'd also like your perspective on this concept of an interest register.
So, Sonali, this is a very new thing, because last year this law, Regulation of Election Expenditure Act number 3 of 2023 was passed. So the idea here is for the Election Commission, with consultation with all the parties and independent groups contesting, to set an authorized amount which a candidate can maximum spend on the elections. So, and also it restricts donations. That means a candidate cannot receive donations or contributions from a government department, public corporation, or even a private company in which government or public corporation holds shares. Also, it restricts obtaining donations or contribution from foreign governments, international organizations, or foreign companies, or Sri Lankan companies in which more than 50% of the shares are held by foreigners, and also obtaining donations or contribution from unidentified persons. So after the conclusion of the election, from the date of the results, within 21 days, all the candidates are required to submit a returns of the contributions they received, with all the details, who gave what, how much, and the expenditures. So, and that, after receiving all that, the Election Commission will publish a notice in a newspaper. After that, any citizen, any person can apply to the Election Commission and go and see that. I think that is very restrictive. I mean, this can be put online. I don't know why have this restrictive way of getting information. I mean, this is an information era. I mean, of course, I don't think there should be any secrecy in this. This is election. I mean, this is not like a person's private assets and liabilities. I mean, when it comes to that, there can be concerns. I mean, that is a debatable thing. But this is election fund. So someone, you're contesting an election and you're receiving donations and contributions. Even loans are also considered as contributions under this. So I think it can be made easily publicly accessible in the website. So this is the first time this is happening, and Election Commission had actually gazetted it a few days ago, and the authorized amount is 1.86 billion rupees. That is 109 rupees per voter. Now there was a lot of hullabaloo about this figure. So 1.86 billion rupees translate into $6.2 million.
Okay.
Right. I just did a search or research on this. I mean, there is presidential election happening in the US as well. Now the Biden-Harris campaign, now it's Harris campaign, but it was earlier Biden-Harris campaign, had raised over $1 billion. And Trump campaign has raised over $327 million. And up until June, this is based on some report, the Biden-Harris campaign has spent $189 million whereas the Trump campaign has spent $92 million. So compared to that, the maximum of $6.2 million is not exorbitant as all the hullabaloo is.
Okay.
And also I think it's a good start to regularize these matters, and I do not want to criticize more on this aspect because this is the first time it's happening. So I think it's a good opportunity for all the activists who were giving pressure to bring about this legislation to follow up this matter and see how it is practically implemented, and how much more things can be done with regard to this, and maybe amend the statute in order to make it more transparent, publish it online, have easy access and all that.
Sure. And I think in the recent past we also saw the matter pertaining to assets and liabilities of elected representatives being made public by way of an amendment, which is also a great development in the law. How important is it to have an interest register where, for example, an individual or a company approaches a political candidate and says, look, I'll fund the advertising for the purposes of your election, and that interest or the contribution will be noted down in a register that is kept at the Elections Commission?
That's very important. I think that is also covered here, where you have to give a return. I mean, you're saying like a spontaneous, a continuous register, and I think it should not be limited only during elections. I think if political parties are functioning and politicians are functioning, they are giving donations even before or after the election period, I think they have to disclose from where they are getting their funds. I mean, otherwise everything is a joke. I mean, otherwise black money is used for politics. I mean, political spending is not limited to election period. I mean, politicians don't campaign only after the election is announced. They campaign before and after. So I think when they are giving donations, when they are going around the country giving things to people, freebies, they should account from, I mean, they should at least disclose from where they are getting their money. And I think that's fair enough.
So regularization needs to be followed up on. We need to also talk about election violence. Just a few days ago, we saw this televised incident where two politicians basically got to blows. And incidents of election violence are being monitored by election monitors. But how do we go about having a free and fair election? I mean, is this only in theory? Of course, we have the legal and regulatory frameworks, we have the Election Commission, we have the police, etc. But how do we ensure this?
I think the culture has to change. That goes down to that. I mean, the criminal justice system should freely and fairly function. Now, we saw two MPs, I believe, in one of the programs what you mentioned, a political debate, assault. I mean, I think one MP was assaulting another MP, and then in defense or retort he was assaulting again, and they were wrestling literally, and that's ugly. But what is our criminal justice system doing? I mean, a crime, an offense, is not against that person. It's the offense is against the state. That is the rationale why the state prosecutes. I mean, what are we doing? What is our criminal justice system doing? Nothing. And I think it's a cultural thing. I mean, look at the brawls that had happened in our parliament. The famous throwing of Miriskudu, the assault. So what has happened? Where is justice? So I think that kind of a political culture must be dispensed with. We have to get rid of it.
We're also looking at general elections following the presidential elections. How important is it for party leaders and parties themselves to reject candidates who are violent, aggressive, narcissistic, I want to say?
I have a different perspective on that. I think first the people have to reject. Once the people reject a person, automatically that person will lose all the all political hype or the political capital he has, and that automatically he will become a non-entity. So the problem here lies in people, despite knowing a person to be a criminal, a violent person, a thug, still keep on voting for him.
Yeah, but the thing is, if it's only those people who are being presented as sellable candidates, then you have no choice but to vote for one of them.
Not necessarily. I mean, I beg to differ on that proposition, because there are always other candidates and there are always other decent options. I mean, as you said, 39 people on the presidential election alone. Think about the parliamentary election, how many options we have, but people do not choose. So for nowadays the trend is to say the top to bottom, the top bottom culture is gone, now it must be bottom top culture. So the change should happen in the bottom. People should change first. Once the people want that change, the change will happen.
Yeah, but we keep the people hungry. How are they supposed to make informed decisions?
Even, see, this was told to me by my doctor. He said, even if you starve, right, even if you starve and you get the opportunity to eat, you eat only good food, don't eat junk food, then your health will improve. So it's an individual choice. If I continue to make the wrong choice, then I have to bear the consequences. I think that is where, I mean, I do not want to operate or think on the presumption that the people are stupid, people are like infants, and there has to be nannies looking after them. I think all human beings are intelligent enough to make personal choices. And I think that is the premise with which I am seeing things.
Okay.
Not in the perspective that, you know, people are stupid, they are ignorant, they don't have basic intelligence. No, I do not agree with that. I think people have all that, and all the people are making informed choices, but for different reasons.
We are in conversation with Attorney at Law N.K. Ashokbharan. We're going for a short commercial break. We'll be right back.
The People's Platform.
Study your day with Edlocate, the industry pioneer in international university student placements. 24th August at Galadari Main Ballroom, 30th August at KCC Banquet Hall. Call us on 077 177 0361 074 287 1734.
Step away from the conventional art of storytelling. Get ready for the Newsfirst Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfikar.
Study your day with Edlocate, the industry pioneer in international university student placements. 24th August at Galadari Main Ballroom, 30th August at KCC Banquet Hall. Call us on 077 177 0361 074 287 1734.
Shut the Crown Grand Finale.
Mayuran SC space number 6 and send it to 7788.
Companies play better politics than the politicians of today.
We are not supposed to play with the people's expectation. Then it will be a huge disaster.
When you're bankrupt and when you're going to bankruptcy, two different.
The grandfather is saying it is going to take this long. What does he know? it's about the lack of sense of humor in Sri Lankans.
Issues that matter the most. Unfiltered discussions. Real answers. Face to face. Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on TV1.
If you want to create your life, create it. This is your opportunity to change your destiny. සඳහි දක්ෂිණ ද්‍රවයට ගොඩ පැසූ අතර මේ ඔවුන්ගේ චන්ද්‍ර ගවේෂණයේ පළමු මෙහෙයුමයි. Bring us this Witness Season 4 Saturday at 6:30 p.m. on TV1.
Hadi rangi, 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 ni pora usra bangi. Hadi rangi, 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 ni pora usra bangi. Orangama kadakene ni enathuk konnu kula nolanja tavare do puriyama.
Shock the Crown Grand Finale.
To vote for Sirasa Bison, SC space number 7 and send it to 7788.
The People's Platform.
Welcome back. I'm in conversation with Attorney at Law N.K. Ashokbharan. Ashokbharan, we're discussing the upcoming presidential election. 39 candidates are vying for the top spot. And to emerge victorious, the winning candidate will require 50% plus one vote. What will happen if there is no clear majority?
It's clearly provided in section 54 of the presidential 57 of the Presidential Elections Act. So since there are more than 3 candidates, we go to section 57B. That is, the top 2 leading candidates will be separated and the rest will be eliminated. So then the contest will be only between the first 2. And others will be eliminated, and among the ballots or votes for the other people, the second preference will be seen to see whether the first or second candidate has received any second preferences among the votes of the eliminated candidates. So that will be calculated and that will be added to the votes of the first and second candidate. Then since it's more than 3 candidates, the third preference, so after that there will be still votes left of the eliminated candidates. Among them it will be seen whether third preference is given to the first candidates who are the two leading candidates, first and second, and those votes will also be added to the first and second candidates. And whoever among the first and second, whoever has the majority, then higher votes, will be the winner. In the odd chance of after all that, of the second and third preference being added, the first and second has equal number of votes. It's a very odd chance. That means adding one vote will decide the winner. The Election Commission can have a lot, and decide the winner. So that's how the election is going to take place. However, there is another significant legal matter which, when I went through the act, made me curious, is how we vote. Now, the Presidential Election Act specifically in Schedule 3 provides the format of voting. Nowhere in that act it mentions the marking of X. It says if you are voting for one person, just put number 1. If you are giving 2 preference, mark 1 and 2. If you are giving 3 preference, 1, 2 and 3. So, but earlier I believe there had been practices of if you are voting for one, you can add X. Whether that's strictly legal or not is debatable, because the Act is silent. Act does not speak anything about marking X. It says voting shall be in accordance with the guide provided in Schedule 3. And the Schedule 3 guide says this number-wise voting. So that could be a significant point if someone wants to raise a legal challenge to it. So this is something I believe the Election Commission could take a proactive role in educating the public, because all other elections people are used to marking X.
Correct.
You put an X before the party you want to vote. Say take the general election. It's the preferential. Sorry, it's the proportional system. So you mark an X next to the party you want to vote. Then you can vote up to 3 preferential votes, or not vote preferential, or you can add 1 or 2 preferential. You just cross over the number. But this is a bit different. So I think a little bit of awareness will be useful. And also it's ought to see even parties in their campaign, they just put their symbol and they put a cross next to it. So I don't think the political parties are taking this matter seriously.
Sure. Yeah, that's a great point. How can the citizens hold to account political leaders in terms of policy and undertakings that they need to make? For example, there are several leaders of different political parties who have come forward and said, if I am voted into office, I will ensure that I abolish the executive presidency. And we've heard this poem a few times by now. How do we bring in accountability mechanisms?
Is it a legal question or a political question?
A bit of both. I'd like your mixed perspectives on this.
So basically you are asking me whether the promises made in election manifesto can be enforced.
Yes.
Unless any law provides for that, it cannot be enforced. And I don't think any law provides for that.
Correct.
And this aspect of trying to enforce election promises or pre-election promises through a public law action has been tried in India. The Indian Supreme Court has rejected it.
Right.
Even in the UK it has been tried to some extent, not. But because the court has rejected it because there is no ground. I mean, a person before he's being elected, he does not hold that post. So he cannot make, he cannot make a promise which can be converted into a legitimate expectation, because he is not a person sitting in that position, right? He's only vying for that position,
right?
So there is a technical gap there. So unless you want to do it by bringing a law which says whatever you say. I mean, there are guidelines that you should not lie. I mean, even in India there are guidelines issued by the Indian Election Commission where you should not say absurd things or lie in your manifesto. But said that, I don't think there are any laws.
It's not very feasible.
It's not feasible. And also in contract law, there's something called the tradesman puff. So, a tradesman, a marketer, to market his good, he can just say puffery.
Yeah, but that's exactly what happens, because we find...
and that's part of the law. I mean, that law accepts that, because that's part of how we live. A tradesman's puffery is an accepted
But we're talking
point.
about the governance of the entire country. And also, what happens is political parties would just recruit or retain the services of an ad agency, and the ad agency would make this fabulously drafted, curated manifesto, which is beautifully designed, and we as the citizens buy into it.
And what is stopping the other party also from doing that? I mean, there are several competing parties. So
you don't see that.
Morally, that might be an issue. But legally, I do not see any issue there, because I mean, how far can we micromanage these things? And I think that is too much of a stretch of an accountability. I think there are other serious accountability concerns which require the attention of the law. I mean, people holding positions and, you know, certain appointments being political appointments. And more than that, the spending, how political parties are obtaining money. I think that is far more concerning than giving promises. And also think in another perspective. Now, sometimes when you fulfill the promises, that can become harmful. I'll tell you a good example. Last presidential election, the person who was elected as the president by the people gave a promise to cut down taxes. He cut down taxes. Where did that lead us to? So, I don't think always finding a way to enforce that mechanism is fruitful. Imagine then someone goes to court, assume that promises given in a manifesto can be enforced. Now, last time they gave a promise to cut taxes and country's economy is crashing. So in order to recover that, we have to increase taxes. Then someone goes to court and says, no, the promise we voted for was to cut down taxes, so you can't increase it. Will that be feasible? So I think there is a feasible aspect to this.
Sure.
Sometimes you say things with the good intention, but I think people, we say that we are a literate country, over 95% literacy rate, and I think people should start thinking. And once they start thinking, they will realize.
Since we're also going into general elections soon after the presidential election, I'd like your perspective on having a quota system for women at the parliamentary election, because we've seen the 25% quota being enforced for the local government elections, and work has been in the pipeline with respect to bringing in a quota for women for the parliamentary elections, but to no avail. How do you view this?
Fundamentally, on principles, I'm against quotas because I think quotas do more harm than good. And think about politics, bringing in quotas. I think this is tested in India and other countries as well, even at the very ground level. So sometimes they change a constituency into a women constituency. So what happens, there would have been a man who was representing that constituency, he still has support. So he feels his wife, his daughter, his daughter-in-law.
It can become tokenistic.
It is tokenistic. It is tokenistic. It is tokenistic. And I do not think that in Sri Lanka, that kind of a thing is necessary in politics. I mean, go to a university here. Who is majority in a university in Sri Lanka?
Yeah,
men or women?
Women, absolutely.
Just walk into law faculty. The proportion is like, I would say 70 to 30.
Okay.
So my point here is that I do not think women in Sri Lanka need quota. They may be not interested in politics. So why do you want to force someone who is not interested in politics to get into politics? Saying that, I do understand where this question comes from. That is to create a pathway, an easy pathway to encourage women and youngsters to get into politics. You can test with quota if you want, but my opinion there is it won't be successful, and that will not give the results that are these good intentions behind bringing these policies won't translate into practice. That is my most humble opinion. I know a lot of people will disagree with this, but I have seen quotas don't work in any countries. Quotas don't work, and I am on principle opposed to that idea of quotas. I think by merit it can be achieved.
When people vote, they tend to sometimes vote on ethno-religious lines, which is quite divisive, and we see how correspondingly politicians use this as a ruse to bring in voters. How damaging is this for the country? I mean, we've lived through it, but speak to us about the problem and what can be the solution.
It's very damaging. I think that is the biggest curse of this country. that this country somehow went down the path of ethno-nationalism and ethno-religious nationalism. We had a choice. When Sri Lanka received its independence, so-called independence from the colonizer, we had an opportunity to build a civic national country, that is an identity of Ceylonese, or you could call it Sri Lanka if you want, but civic nationalism. However, sadly, Sri Lanka chose the path of ethno-religious nationalism. That some critics say that is due to the political necessities or power struggle or whatever it may be. We had selfish leaders who wanted to get into power by hook or crook. So we did not have leaders like Lee Kuan Yew, who said ethnicity and religion has nothing to do with politics, who kept it out of politics and built a Singaporean identity. Now, Singapore is a country where Chinese Singaporeans are majority. I mean, had Lee Kuan Yew played the Chinese card, he could have still been in power. But he did not only want to be in power, he wanted to build a country, a great country for all Singaporeans. And I think that is something we could aspire. I mean, a lot of people want to convert Sri Lanka into Singapore economically, or the way how Singapore looks, the beautiful, clean, nice cities. Make it the shipping hub, make it a business hub. But all that can happen only if we follow the other side of Singapore. That is building a civic nationalist identity. I think that is where Sri Lanka has failed, terribly failed. And that is perhaps the only hope Sri Lanka has. I mean, it's a new generation, and I believe things will change for Sri Lanka for the better. And it could start with teaching all 3 languages to everyone. No harm learning an extra language. That will be beneficial, and we have a good education system where easily the state can implement that, because large majority of schools are state-run schools. So if there is will, there is a way, but that will has been lacking for over 75 years now.
Ashokbharan, in my introductory quote, I said that the most important element of government is the method of choosing leaders. What's stopping Sri Lanka from electing a Lee Kuan Yew?
Oh, Sri Lanka did think that it elected Lee Kuan Yew in 2019. I mean, that is my attempt at humor. I think the problem here is that politics for 75 years has molded the minds of Sri Lankans in a different way. And to come out of that mold will take a lot of effort. And we need leaders, more than leaders, political movements which think beyond the old confines, political confines, and are willing to change how things happen. Said that such a change cannot happen when everything is in crisis. So I believe first the crisis should settle, because crisis affects everyone's lives normalcy. So at a stage of chaos and crisis, although a lot of people think and say change will happen, I don't think Sri Lanka is outright ready to change things. That mindset change, I don't think it's going to immediately happen, although it appears like. So I think first Sri Lanka should come out of the crisis, and then a young movement with fresh thinking should come out. And I mean there are a lot of movements which are giving hope, and I believe that they will be these movements, and all of us together will be able to move forward in a different way and break this 75 plus year old curse. So I think that is how change can happen, and I don't believe in magic, because magic is an illusion. So I think change takes time. And political change takes enormous amount of time. it will be slow, but it doesn't matter it's slow. We have to see whether it's steadily progressing. As long as it's steadily progressing, even if it is not immediately, but definitely it'll change. And I am hopeful. And that is why I didn't leave the country.
Amazing. Thanks so much, N.K. Ashokbharan, attorney at law, for sharing your perspectives. Thank you for watching us. We'll see you again next Friday. Good night.